change management in any organization is difficult, but take a global organization that's got 5,000 marketers and they're organized into different regional groups, and each wants to go to market in their own unique way. And so that whole idea, the automation mindset, is by integrating these systems and then applying smart automation, smart business practices, and you can actually begin to pull this system together into something that gives you the agility you need. What if you could tap into the sheer amount of data that's represented by a complex go-to-market plan and harness that data to begin to get insights on just how much do we have to spend against a certain audience segment before it's oversaturated? Where does the response rate start to atrophy and you need to figure out how to shift resources? There's incredible amounts of insights to be gained there, and AI is going to have a remarkable impact.
Welcome to the new automation mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. I'm your host, Markus Zirn, and as Chief Strategy Officer and part of the founding executive team at Workato, it is my mission to find these top innovators in AI, automation, and integration and share their journeys with all of you. This podcast is inspired by the Wall Street Journal best-selling book with the same title, written by Workato CEO Vijay Tella. If you would like a free copy of the book, be sure to listen for a special offer at the end of today's episode. So today I have with me Jim Williams, CMO of Uptempo. And yep, you heard that right. So not CIO, not CDO or CTO, but Chief Marketing Officer. So Jim actually has an amazing career in the marketing space. And among other things he was 7 years at Eloqua. And if you guys remember, Eloqua is pretty much the company that invented the marketing automation space, so very impactful. And so today really is around automation in the marketing world. And I promise everyone here on the call, we will learn something new today, not just about marketing, but also about effective end-to-end business operations in general. Because really what we're going to go into and what Uptempo does, it caters to some really big dollar marketing challenges, and interestingly enough, they're actually quite highly underserved by automation. And so Uptempo is also a Workato embedded customer. So Jim knows very well the value that Workato brings to the Uptempo customers. So this is going to be exciting. So welcome, Jim, first of all. And tell us a little bit about Uptempo. What you guys do. What's the specific business process you're helping your customers with? What do your typical customers look like?
Thank you, Markus. I'm delighted to be here. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I hope I don't let you down as the first CMO on your podcast. But I think your podcast covers some very interesting topics that certainly Uptempo has a perspective on. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll tell you a little bit about Uptempo. We are a company that provides planning solutions for enterprise marketing teams. Right, so you can think about it as managing all the plan and spend and some of the work required on the operational side of the marketing house, and we do that for the world's largest companies. And you can think about it as we're in certainly tech companies, like a Cisco or an IBM, but we're also in manufacturing companies, retail, consumer packaged goods, fast-moving consumer goods, financial services. And what kind of these very diverse customers have in common is they have no operational system to manage their go-to-market. It's the best way to think about it. How they actually plan their marketing strategy, their campaigns, their programs, and how that's linked to a budget and how the budget gets spent. That is actually today a bit chaotic and less mature than you would think with some of these brands.
Okay, cool. So, to help the audience understand then, so what you guys do is not marketing execution. So the front end of marketing, it's the back end of marketing. Why is this such an important piece to automate?
Yeah, that's correct. That's a good way to think about it. There's so much that's been invested over the last 20 years in marketing technology. Call it the MarTech explosion, as Scott Brinker likes to call it. Right, some 13,000 applications out there to help you activate your campaigns and reach audiences and track what they do and measure their effectiveness. And yet, on the back end of marketing, true marketing operations, how you run the business of marketing, there's very little in the way of automation or platforms or MarTech. Most of the planning that's done in large, sophisticated organizations is done on hundreds of spreadsheets and hundreds of PowerPoints. It's very steam powered. And we help to solve that. Another thing that's kind of important to keep in mind is with the explosion of MarTech applications came an explosion of data, an almost overwhelming amount of data for marketing executives and strategists to kind of pick through to understand not just is a particular channel effective or a particular tactic or a piece of content, but kind of boil it back up to answer the question, is the marketing strategy working, right? Do we have the right programs and campaigns in market today, and how are they performing? And is it helping the company to reach its business objectives? There's no system of record that ties those things together, and that has profound implications. It could certainly lead to, picking the wrong strategy, oversaturating an audience or underserving an audience, or overspending or underspending budget, lack of collaboration, wasted time, loss of credibility, sometimes loss of job, right? When you can't answer the basic question from peers at the executive level or shareholders or the board, is the marketing strategy working? And if not, how do we plan to change that strategy? It's really hard to answer those questions.
It's actually really interesting. There's certain, from an IT perspective, right? There's certain integrations everybody does. Like order to cash. I think everybody heard of order to cash. It's always done. Maybe employee onboarding is one of the newer ones that now everybody does. Procure to pay, people talk about it. And, we make a big fuss about making sure that, every travel expense is synced with the finance system and all of those kind of things. But then there's this big bucket of money that we spend on marketing, which is actually, if you ask the CFO, it's a lot of money. Well, and that isn't connected to the finance system at all. It's, that's what I would really say. Look, if we have any CFOs listening in, if we have any CIOs listening in, I think that might be an area you guys want to focus in, like a quick win. Maybe think about Uptempo and what you guys do, and bring automation to somewhere where it actually really matters from a dollar and cents perspective. Now, it's really interesting. You always learn something new, always find some new things for integration and automation. So you alluded a little bit before, but so marketing planning, like if you kind of create that picture, what it looked like before, and then after using Uptempo with the embedded Workato platform, kind of make it kind of visual to people, like what's the before and the after?
Yeah. So let's talk about that. We'll talk about the impact of Workato and just the notion of integrations, right? So we position ourselves as a single system of record for managing plan and spend. The one place where the entire marketing organization, and in fact, people beyond the marketing organization, can go to understand what is our marketing plan, what's in market today, what's coming next. In order to do that, we have to manage the planning process and how the plan is articulated, most obviously through the notion of like a comprehensive marketing calendar, as an example, but also the financial management, the budget. And just there, as you alluded to, it's amazing if you can think about the last, say, decade or two as when it comes to MarTech, the integration of marketing activation to revenue outcomes, right? Managing the customer journey to get to the sale. Then we kind of view as the next decade as integrating marketing and financial infrastructure. And that just hasn't been done in many organizations. To your point, companies, in the consumer space may put aside 35% of their revenue, and that is the marketing budget. And that's handed over to a marketing organization who manages it on spreadsheets. There's no real integration between that budget being managed by brand managers, campaign managers, program managers. There's no integration back to the ERP system today. So it's this long, circuitous process whereby marketers go and make requests for spends against a vendor or a channel or an event or a trade show, whatever it might be. They try and track it themselves in a spreadsheet, but there's little to no understanding of when does that invoice come in? When does it have to actually go out? When is it posted to the chart of accounts, the ERP? What's left in that budget to spend? If you want to shift money from one tactic to another, how long does that take to actually do? And how much visibility and transparency is there over that process? So that's the first place we start, is by integrating our platform using Workato to financial systems that run the business. Now that could be an Oracle system or an SAP system, or it could be like an Anaplan, if you will, if that's what companies are using, et cetera. And that integration just closes the loop between the planned spend, the forecasted spend, the committed spend, and the actual spend. So all of those things are happening in near real time. That gives an incredible amount of visibility and agility to the marketing team, but it also enhances the credibility of marketing right up to the CMO, that they are a good steward of precious financial resources the company has to offer. So the integration of finance to marketing systems, meaning Uptempo, is the first place that we start. From there, like the next obvious integrations are, okay, you spent the money, like just the simple notion. Marketers talk all the time about ROI, and yet there's no system to actually measure the I, like what is being invested at any given time. Once we have that in place, we then tie to performance systems. So that might be, as an example, a CRM system, or it might be a data lake, or it might be a business intelligence tool, right? To tie back the performance of marketing campaigns back into the planning system, so you can tie your spend to performance and actually get to true ROI. That's another big integration point for us. And then finally, we link to work, right? So you can come up with the best plans in the world, but you actually need a marketing team to start executing on that. And the work is project management and task management and capacity planning and content production systems. And all of that is done in tools like DAM or work management systems. It might be in a Monday or an Asana, or maybe it's an Adobe Workfront. And so we're tying to those systems too, such that you can go all the way, like the full life cycle from the creation of the plan itself and cascading that through campaigns and programs and tactics and activities, and tie that to the production systems itself that govern how quickly you can get those ideas to market.
Yeah, I think you answered a lot of my next question already, but because I was thinking, we started at the 30,000 foot level and saying like, all right, it's connecting marketing to finance, but then it always tends to become more complex than you think, right? But I think you alluded to, so I think it's the finance system itself, like your Oracle, your SAP, your NetSuite, whatever it might be. It could be a planning system in finance, like an Anaplan that people run. But then you went into the performance management systems, like your BI, your data warehouse, where you actually get the actual result, the CRM system, the project management system. I mean, it becomes quite a bit of integration. Feels like this is what you guys have is a piece that really thrives by being connected in a way to a lot of data and information.
That's right. Like many tech tools and applications, it's fed by data. And, there's this data explosion. That data resides in so many repositories across the modern enterprise. And for us, we're pulling together the ones that are more strategic in nature, right? Like starting with dollars, follow the dollars. And so we start there. And that just, again, we think about the journey that our customers go through. The first step is just obtaining visibility, just to see what is the current state of the marketing plan, what is the current state of the budget. But from that, you get these ancillary benefits, right? The kind of next step up the maturity ladder is, well, now that you see this, how fast can you move? How quickly can you execute on these marketing strategies? So the notion of velocity is really important. And then as that data flow starts to come in from performance systems, because we know, no plan survives contact with the enemy. And that's certainly the case in business as elsewhere. You're going to need to shift plans, right? The notion today is like agility is the new norm in marketing. How can you be agile if you're not connecting the outcomes, the results, the business impact back to the original plan? So we try and get our customers to this notion of agility, quickly pivoting the original plan to take advantage of market opportunities.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, it's, I was just thinking about your earlier career with Eloqua, right? When you tie the marketing automation system with your CRM and maybe, whatever else is there, the SDR, outreach system or whatever it might be, that's still within marketing, right? But I think what you guys are doing, you're busting the silos between marketing and finance. And I think that's whenever you get to go the end-to-end across two functions, I think that's always, at least my experience, when integration and automation gets really impactful. Tell me, Jim. So, look, the podcast is obviously this complementary thing to our book, the new automation mindset, and it highlights the process mindset, the growth mindset, the scale mindset. To you as a CMO, how does that resonate? What do you take away from the book for what you do?
It's a really good question. And I think I've alluded to a lot of this already, but if you just take a step back and contextualize, you and I work for B2B companies of a certain size. The B2B motion certainly has complexity as well, but try and compare and contrast that to now you go into a consumer goods company. Let's just say a company a makeup company, a well-known brand makeup company we work with, right? The company itself is 150 years old. They have 20,000 marketers, thousands of individual products operating in multiple global regions that are comprised of different countries. And in those countries have different cultures. They have different currencies, right? You're on a global scale like that. Even the notion of running campaigns, seasonal campaigns, becomes incredibly complex because you're operating in multiple global regions that might be in different seasons at the same time, right? So it becomes an incredibly complex problem to solve, right? To have a centralized planning system that pushes that out to regions and then gets a flow of information back, financial information, performance information, and actual execution and work information. And so the only way to tackle that scale of complexity is through automation, is by coming up with a system for planning, a framework, right? A methodology that companies like that can adopt such that they can get to that level of visibility. Yes, the integrations are complex and the data flows are complex as well. But on top of that is also the notion of change management, how to operate a different way. As you know, change management in any organization is difficult, but take a global organization that's got 5,000 marketers organized into different regional groups, and each wants to go to market in their own unique way. And what they do today is they each get a share of the budget, and then they come up with their own plan and they put that into a PowerPoint and send it back to the global headquarters. And suddenly the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And so that whole idea of the automation mindset is by integrating these systems and then applying smart automation, smart business practices, and you can actually begin to pull this system together into something that gives you the agility you need.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it seems like the way you highlight it becomes clear to me that, if any company should be thinking about what you guys do and automating this back-end marketing process, I mean, it would be these big consumer brands, right? Because they're the share of marketing is probably bigger than in a B2B company. It's just vital. Yet at the same time, I can totally also see like how these companies probably don't have the people that think about like data flows and automation. They're probably much more, they think about the marketing message and the emotions associated with it. They're a lot more kind of like it says left brain, right brain kind of a problem. Yet they would really benefit from being more systematic about it. So that actually brings me to Scott Brinker. We both know him, right? And Scott actually, his title was like the Chief Martech. He's a co-author to the new automation mindset. I mean, but he's also done a lot for the marketing space. And I think one of the things was, bringing that technology, that marketing stack component in the forefront of marketeers. If we talk about data in marketing, I mean, he wrote this piece that resonated a lot with me, where he said, like, I think he called it From Big Data to Big Operations, where he basically said, like, look, there's so much data available, yet all we do is, we're happy when we can look at it through a dashboard. And he said, like, well, what if you guys thought about, big operations? What if you thought about just doing something about this data, like automating events in the data, making it actionable? And I do think he has a real point about that. What's your take? I mean, is this relevant to Uptempo, to what you guys do?
Absolutely relevant. Absolutely relevant. And I am a big fan of Scott Brinker. I read every one of his blogs. I look forward to it and frequently circulate, and we have interesting conversations around it. The particular article you're referring to, right, this notion of big ops, right, the decade of big ops, absolutely resonates, right? So first came SaaS, and then came the explosion of digital marketing channels. Then came the explosion of MarTech to manage marketing over those channels. Then came a ton of data, and then came the rise of operations, marketing operations, then sales operations, then customer operations. There's DevOps, there's RevOps, there's all of these things, right? So it's a response to, as he points out, the challenge of not just managing the data, but integrating, assimilating that data, and most importantly, analyzing the data to know what to do next. Uptempo just adds another data set to that, a data set that's frequently overlooked. A lot of marketers have become good at analyzing their response rate, their channel effectiveness, et cetera. What's not happening as frequently is, kind of leveling up to the overall financial picture of marketing and how that fuels a plan and how that complements a strategy to reach a business objective. It's almost like the higher you go on the operational side of marketing, the less automation there is, the less systems there are. In some ways, that those 13,000 MarTech apps sit on the customer-facing side of the business, but the back office of marketing is still being run on antiquated steam-powered systems like Microsoft Office and SharePoints and PowerPoints and everything else. So what if you could tap into the sheer amount of data that's represented by a complex go-to-market plan and the financial system underneath of the budget, and harness that data to begin to get insights on just how much do we have to spend against a certain audience segment before it's oversaturated. Like where does the response rate start to atrophy and you need to figure out how to shift resources. There's incredible amounts of insights to be gained there. We think of that as big ops too. It's for us, it's just maybe at a more strategic level. Marketing operations is, widely embraced and invested in B2B segments, especially tech. As usual, tech leads in many industries. In retail, consumer packaged goods, not as much. They might not even have a formal role of marketing operations, and IT steps in to kind of do that, or separate analytics teams. And similarly, we have this, we talk to a lot of marketing operations professionals. We have a pretty robust, thriving community. And a matter of fact, on a monthly basis, we do something called the Huddle, where we invite marketing ops professionals to join and have an open peer-to-peer conversation about all types of things. That has nothing to do with plan and spend. It's just about like, how do they manage their career, as an example. Regular conversations around that. And one of the challenges we see is that marketing operations professionals, particularly in B2B, kind of tap out because they're so in the weeds of configuration of MarTech and integration of MarTech tools that sometimes it's hard to see how they get a path to executive leadership. And for us, we strongly believe that that path is getting to the next rung up, where you start to talk about planning strategy, financial strategy. We think that is a really important path. And that path moves from, say, what's a marketing ops role to maybe something that might be a strategic operations and planning role. The eyes and the ears of the CMO.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You brought up the sense that, again, it's maybe not only good to have all of this data and all of these systems. Sometimes it also can weight you down, right? As you said, like these people they don't see the progression in their careers because they have to deal with all these details and all the operational aspects and so on, which actually brings me to AI. It's kind of funny because I think of AI, Gen AI specifically, as this kind of thing that actually makes me, breathe again. Like, for example, I don't have to put something in the CRM system because Gen AI summarizes my recorded call and puts it into CRM. I don't even know. Maybe I have to press an approve button, but, so much easier. We actually have it now at Workato with HR. When I do an interview, the call gets recorded and it actually suggests my basically my comment in the recruiting system. So all of this, maybe there's a way to take some of these operational details away from people to think again about your career. But in general, I wonder, like for Uptempo, for you guys, Backend of marketing, obviously, it's early 2024. We had like 1 year of Gen AI being everywhere. I mean, I can't do a podcast without asking you about Gen AI. How do you guys think about AI, Gen AI? How do you see what you do, marketing planning, maybe evolve over the next years with some AI added to it?
Sure. Of course, like every other company in this space, we're intensely leaning into AI to understand where it can help. Now, Gen AI, of course, is making its impact felt all across marketing, right? Marketing is responsible for delivering a message to an audience over the right channel at the right time. And it's already a revolution underway on how that message is delivered and how it can be optimized and how it can summarize. Just in the back office on the Gen AI, there's all types of things that it can do already on creating campaign briefs, creative briefs, content production, etc. So that, of course, will have an impact. There's also kind of the next level up, which is the best way to explain this. Planning is done in so many different ways, and the articulation of a plan is represented in so many different ways. There isn't a lot of standardization, I will say. Most marketers, I'm going to make a generalization here, but many, many marketers, enter the profession because, they have a creative flair. They're good at content production, good at writing, they're good at speaking, good at communicating, etc. And now we have marketing operations that people are much more data driven, might come from an engineering background, etc. But the structure of a plan is all over the place. And we feel that in order to be effective, some form of standardization in how you articulate your marketing plan needs to happen. Right? What's at the top? There's strategy at the top, right? And then you have defining objectives. And then there's a notion of campaigns, and then the notion of programs, and then the notion of tactics, and then there's activities, right? And just that language itself and where your particular initiative fits in that hierarchy, that tree, is highly subjective. But the more you could standardize that, right, the more you can understand, you can measure apples to apples or oranges to oranges, and even begin the benchmark. Again, we mentioned my background in Eloqua, right? But the reason why Eloqua and other marketing automation systems, and the same can be said for content systems and ABM platforms now, one of the reasons why they became more widespread and adopted is because there was some standardization of the language itself, right? What is a SQO versus an SQL versus an MQL versus all of these things, those terms, like marketers were craving for the standardization so they can organize. Same thing has to happen with planning. And I think AI can have a really big impact on doing that for you automatically, understanding where this particular activity fits in that structure such that people can judge it and understand it in context. So there's a role there. But for us, the holy grail is for you as a marketer or a marketing executive to simply ask the question of, where do I spend my next dollar? Where do I spend my next dollar? And that requires a data set, like a highly specific data set, a data set that's custom to your organization, right? But that's where we want to get to, right? If you get enough plan data and spend data and performance data into one system, into one model, well, there's a lot you can do to try and guide marketing teams towards doing the next best thing, having the most impact with the most efficiency, the lowest cost per acquisition, whether that's a B2B product purchase or acquiring leads or completing a shopping cart or mind share or wallet share, however you intend to measure it. AI is going to have a remarkable impact in that space. We're not there yet, but that for us is where we want to get to.
No, makes sense. I mean, I'm just thinking here, we're obviously at that intersection of automation and AI. We're trying to infuse AI in all the processes that we're involved in, just because it can create so much impact if done properly. But the interesting thing is, good point. All the examples I brought up, they were more front end examples, right? The Gen AI, the creation, so that's front end of marketing. When we work with finance departments, and that's probably more where your intersection is, right? Finance people, you don't want to post to the ledger with some kind of AI involved, right? Because you want to have something like super predictable, right? There's not going to be any ambiguity about that. But then the one thing that is interesting, like finding exceptions, is one of the things that the AI thing is really, and also Gen AI actually is really good. And we're actually surprised sometimes when Gen AI comes back and says like, hey, with all your data, there's something here in March in this region that just looks different from everything else. And maybe that's the impulse to kind of actually get people to figure out better what they can do with their spend. If they find these specific irregularities that could be good or bad. Right. If you're good, you double down. If it's bad, you avoid it the next time, and you'll do better. I think there's an opportunity. And just from an impact perspective, I'm not sure if you've seen that study, but they let doctors diagnose like real patients in a hospital, right? And then they ran AI on the side. Didn't impact the diagnostics, but so no one was harmed by AI. But the reality is AI is diagnostics actually were better. And it's a little scary, but I think it also shows the potential of what is possible also in marketing planning, I believe. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we go.
It's a brave new world, that's for sure. We can see a lot change.
That's sure. All right. So, Jim, we talked about, new automation mindset. We talked about process quite a bit, right? You busting the silos, that end-to-end process between marketing and finance. We talked about growth mindset with data, with AI coming in. Last but not least, I wanted to address the scale mindset because, technology really only matters if it's accessible. So impact comes with scale, and it comes with, not just 3 people in a company being able to do it, more people need to do it. So tell me about Uptempo and the Workato embedded integration platform. Who does these integrations? How are you able to scale setting up all of these complicated integrations for your customers to get all the impact?
It's a really good question. As you kind of point out, it really depends on the complexity involved with the client. Frankly, Workato, most of the times we're using Workato platform, which greatly simplifies the process of building these integrations for our teams, but it is our teams that are doing it often on behalf of the customers because, there's a high degree of difference between the 10-year-old B2B tech company and the 150-year-old consumer packaged good company and exactly how their financial systems work. It's in these very, very large organizations, it's not we're doing an integration to one application that'll work, right? It's many things. So, you may look at there might be an Oracle financial application at work, and then there might be a purchase order, purchase request system that's separate from that then integrates into that tool. So often we're doing a high degree of discovery to understand what is the desired outcome for clients, and then doing that on behalf of the clients. That's not the case for all of them. In fact, many of our customers are using Workato themselves internally to build integrations, in which case we work hand in hand with those clients. But that's how it's done today for the most part.
But I think that's totally fine. And I think that to me, the importance really is that someone who also understands the operations. So, and I assume the services people that you guys have, they are the same people that also configure your system and that can have meaningful conversations about marketing planning with your customers. These are not like Java coders sitting in somewhere in the cellar. I mean, and don't even know what marketing is all about. I think making that leap forward, I think, is a huge leap already.
Huge, and Workato's been a big part of that. Not just with Uptempo, just in the marketplace. Like your vision for this idea of scale mindset makes tons of sense, and the idea of democratizing the process of integrating business applications such that a business user or someone who understands the business outcomes or business process can do that work is incredibly important, because from that, we can produce a library of best practices integrations, right? Or here's our recommended configuration for you if you're a retail organization versus a consumer packaged goods versus financial. They look very different. And here's our experience, and here's what we've done. You can learn from that. And then tailor from there. That's really, really important.
And I think you still have the flexibility because you work with these large companies then to adjust as needed. Awesome. Listen, Jim, this was fascinating. I hope it was fascinating for the entire audience here, having our first CMO on the podcast. I mean, at least from what I took away is I think there are integrations maybe we haven't thought about that we should. I mean, definitely if people from large consumer oriented companies are listening in, I think there's money to be saved and efficiency to be gained. And very interesting also the conversation around data and AI and so on. So Jim, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thanks everyone.
Well,
for
you're
listening.
welcome, and thank you for the invitation, Marcus. I hope I didn't let you down as you're having the marketer on the show, but I enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot from the conversation. Hope the audience did too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you like what you heard, we do have a special offer for you. If you share this or any other episode of the podcast on LinkedIn with the hashtag TNAM for the new automation mindset, that's TNAM, our team will reach out to you and make sure you get a free hardcover copy of the book by our Workato CEO, Vijay Tella. Please make sure to rate today's episode, leave us a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the show so you will never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.